Real quick, before we jump into the podcast, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Pupford. As a dog trainer, I use and recommend training treats a lot, and some of my absolute favorites are the freeze-dried training treats from Pupford. They're not only high value, but they're limited ingredient and low calorie, which I definitely appreciate. And if you put them on auto ship, you'll actually get 15% off. So with that, let's jump into today's episode. Welcome to the podcast. Today's topic is all about cooperative care when it comes to our dogs. Very important topic. I say that at the beginning of every one. So we will be covering why cooperative care is important, what it is, and how you can start considering starting to do this with your dog at home. And here to help me talk about this important topic is Rachel Forday. She is a Victoria Stilwell Academy certified dog trainer and the owner of Dog at Heart, located in the UK. Welcome to the podcast, Rachel. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yes, I'm so excited we get to chat about this topic. I know you're very passionate about cooperative care, and I know as dog trainers, we are always talking about this and trying to educate others about why this is so important and what it's all about. Yeah. So I think this is a great topic to help those at home that might be struggling. I know a lot of my clients and a lot of people have trouble with this. So let's start off by kind of just defining what it is.
Yep.
And why you think it's important for people to consider with their dogs. So how would you define what cooperative care is, Rachel?
Yeah, so cooperative care is about helping our dogs to feel more comfortable during handling and husbandry, whether that's at home or at the vets or at the groomers. The dog is actually having a say in what's happening to them. So it's not just about them tolerating what's happening, but them actually being a willing participant in what's going on. So when we work on cooperative care, our dog has a way of telling us, when they're ready, or to kind of stop what we're doing and either go back to an easier step or give them a break. It's about, having that two-way conversation with our dogs.
Right. Yeah, I think it's kind of them consenting in and like you said, willing participants. Because I think tolerance is often viewed as they're doing great.
Yeah.
And, tolerance and enjoyment, or at least participating or wanting to do it, are two very different things.
Exactly. And, we still build up what we want to do with the dog. If the dog is scared of nail clipping, we're not just going to, go straight into that. We're going to build it up. Maybe, we start with just hovering our hand near the paw without touching it, But throughout this process, the dog has a way to say, okay, I'm ready now. And, oh, hey, I need to take a break, and then we let them have a break. And, we as people control so much of our dogs' lives as it is.
So true.
Where they live, where they walk, what they eat. And that's not always a bad thing, that's a safety thing as well. But having control and having sort of a choice is a really important part of any animal's welfare. So if we can actually find ways to give them a bit more control and choice that is safe, then we absolutely should.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you just said, it's important for any animal, and us included, right? Feeling like we're willing participants in things. We've all had, whether that's family engagements or obligations, or, things at work, or, any type of relationship or event that you're going to. We've all been having to do something that we didn't really want to participate in. It's not that much fun, and it can be stressful as well. So I think it's important to mention to people, just going off of what you said, Rachel, that it's important because not only is the animal going to feel better about it and they have a say and they get to again, participate in it, but also I think too, it can lead to some issues and furthering those issues, making them progressively worse if we don't address this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So because, every dog will need to see the vet at some point in their lives. And some dogs may definitely need grooming, depending on their breed. So it's really important that they feel better in these situations to kind of reduce their stress that they're experiencing. The more bad experiences this dog has with the handling, gets forced to be handled, the more that their behavior can sort of escalate into something more aggressive, like biting whoever's touching them, and can become more sensitive about about being touched in certain areas of their body or even all over their body. So we
Right.
don't want that to happen. We don't want our dogs to get to that stage. So this can be a good way to prevent that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. Because I think sometimes when we say cooperative care, it's such a big, so many
Yeah.
things in cooperative care, but bringing it down to just that basic need for the dog and helping
Yeah.
the pet parent and the dog just do better in all of those situations, whether that's the vet or the groomer, or even at home stuff, which I love to do. I'm one of those anal dog moms that I do everything. I know you're like that, like we do
Yeah.
as much as we can as trainers at home. Like I clip their nails and brush them and brush their teeth and clean their ears. And I'm doing all of it. I'm like their little mini groomer, although I don't know how to groom dogs, but I know how to do all of that with mine. So I feel like it really does help them feel a lot better. And then we're better because our dogs aren't upset.
Yeah,
So
exactly. We're less stressed as well, doing all
yes,
this.
it's a
Yeah.
de-stressor for everyone. It is work,
Yes.
but at the end of it, you get that reward, that positive reinforcement as well of our dogs doing well and we're happy. And so it's a win-win across the board, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
So yeah. And I always say that human change is how we get dog behavior change. Like human behavior change is how we get our dog's behavior to change and modify. So I've seen, and I know you have too, have seen so many videos on the internet and pictures and things, especially these videos of dogs, whether it's nail trimming or care, or, the dog's trying to get a bath or trying to get their dog to take a bath. And I don't think people realize this. I don't blame them because people are very unaware of these things are very stressful sometimes for their dogs. And I've seen everything of being called, they're being dramatic, they're just throwing a fit, or they're being stubborn about getting into the bath or getting the nails. And I know we're looking at it as trainers going, oh my gosh, this poor dog's very stressed out. So what do you think, in your opinion, in your professional opinion, what can we do to help people, to educate people on shifting that mentality of, okay, it's not the dog being dramatic, it's just they're very stressed out. So what can we tap into to help people understand, to shift that mindset and put it more, I guess, more on us versus the dog? I really try to put more of the responsibility on us. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's a really common thing, for people to kind of assume that all dogs or all cats, they hate going to the vet, they hate getting their nails trimmed. So then it becomes a bit of a funny thing because the dog freaks out over something that we think is no big deal. We trim our nails, we do that for ourselves with no problems.
Right.
But the fear is actually real to our dogs. And I think that's what we need to remember, and what people kind of need to be reminded of, because, even as people, there are things that scare us that, to another person might seem like nothing, because, maybe you're afraid of tiny spiders, but to another friend, that's no big deal. They have pet spiders. And the fear, but the fear that you experience when you see that spider, that fear is real. That fear is real. That feeling is real. So we have to understand how the fear is real to our dogs as well, and it's a big deal to them. So I think it's really helping people see things from their dog's perspective. And if we don't, then what happens is we don't make as much of an effort to try and make the experience for the dog a bit better. And so one of the problems that arises through this sort of mindset issue is that when our dog maybe does need care, we end up putting it off because maybe we don't like seeing them stressed. We don't like having them snap at people or snap at us, and it makes us feel stressed or embarrassed, things like that. And if our dog is in pain or in discomfort because he's unwell, then the experience can become so much worse as well. So, with cooperative care, we can actually help to minimize the stress, not just for the dogs, but also for the dogs' humans as well. And the other people who might be involved in the handling of the dog, whether that's the vet or the groomer. And the way that I try to educate people about it is really talk about it on my platforms and in places like this podcast, and just try and bring awareness to cooperative care as something that can be done. There are a couple of people who have told me that they had no idea was even a thing until they found me. And they really wish that when they got their dog, someone did tell them about this, because it would have been so much easier to work on it early on before it had started to escalate into more of a sort of snappy biting type of situation.
Right. Yeah, I do think that that's, I've heard so many people say to me, I had no idea. I had no idea
Yeah,
this was a thing. I had no idea I had to work on this.
yeah,
They didn't even have it on the list of things. I don't think
yeah.
it's one of those things people call a trainer and go, I need help with cooperative care. Like, I
No,
don't think I've
exactly.
ever had that call.
No, exactly. Yeah,
And it is important. I'm so glad that we get to spread more awareness about this. And I think that this is something, and for those listening, I think this is important. This is something you should start immediately, pretty much, like,
yeah,
maybe not the first second you bring your dog into the house, but, fairly soon thereafter. This is something that I rather work on things like, if it's a puppy, socializing and cooperative care procedures, or even if
yeah,
it's an older dog, cooperative care procedures, and
yeah,
just maybe desensitizing to certain things that they're uncomfortable with as a starting point before we do really. We can teach a 12-year-old dog to like go on their bed or whatever, like whatever
exactly.
those skills are that are important. But these things are going to they're a little more labor intensive sometimes,
Yeah.
because some dogs are already uncomfortable. And so it's worth putting in the time right away to build on it. So would you recommend that? Because I recommend it for puppies, like as soon as we get a puppy, just kind of starting on that at some
Yeah.
point. What do you think about that? Like earlier
That,
is
that would
better,
be
right?
so ideal, because with puppies, they're so exploratory at that certain age.
Yes.
And, I'm not saying all puppies are the same, and some can be a little bit more sensitive, but especially for the
Sure.
sensitive ones, it's kind of good to get, started on them understanding that being handled, getting the
Mm-hmm.
nails trimmed, getting touched everywhere, going to the vets or the groomers is no big deal. And in fact, when
Right.
they go there, it's always fun times when they get to play and eat, and
Positive.
with rescues and older dogs, I also think that's a really good time to start, when you get them, and work with a professional trainer, on
Mm-hmm.
it, because when you get a new rescue, then that cooperative care can also be a really good way to build that trust, with your new dog, by giving
True.
them choice, helping them feel safe, and using positive reinforcement with the dog. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like older dogs, like my dog Dave, he was 9 when I got him. So,
Oh,
since
wow.
then, yeah, he was 9 years old.
I didn't
So
know he was 9.
he's an
Wow,
old
he
boy.
looks like such a youngster.
I know.
Man.
He's getting more and more young in terms of his behavior, which is nice to see him being playful.
Yeah.
But since I adopted him, I've been working on that cooperative care, just so that in that event, touch
Right.
wood, as he gets
Mm-hmm.
older, he might need more medical care and support, and then he's
Sure.
ready for it. He's not going to be so stressed out for it.
That's important to bring up too, because as our dogs age, just like with that, we might need to be heading back to the vet some more than we were before when they were 2 or whatever. And I definitely have with Jade. She's 9. She just turned 9 in December, so she's around Dave's. Well, wait, how old's Dave now?
He's 11 now.
Okay, I was gonna say it's been a couple years. So they're seniors, and
Yeah.
technically, and although I don't like to admit it, but she we had to go to the vet recently, a few days ago actually, and I was a mess because I always am. I'm like that mom that's like, oh, and and I was glad, like they said she was an absolute angel with everything, and I was really proud of that moment, because I've been working really hard with her on getting all sorts of things being touched everywhere, and getting, she needs a shot or needle, they have to take a blood draw, things like that. We're always working on it, but
Yeah.
it's something we've put in work on, and you get to get that good feedback from the vet or the groomer in those moments. And you're like, whew, thank
Yeah.
goodness. So
Yeah.
definitely important. And I want to bring back something you brought up. I think bringing up human analogies is really important. Of
Yeah.
like, I don't love spiders, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I've been getting better because we live near wooded area, and where our house is now, especially in the summer months, I get to see them a lot, and I have to
Oh, yeah.
coexist with them. And I've had to work on that myself. But yeah, my husband John, he doesn't care about anything. He'll pick it up and like politely bring it outside, and I'm screaming. And it's interesting. He doesn't care, but I care, and
Yeah.
it's a completely different reaction. So I think with our dogs, kind of putting yourself in that position and thinking of something you're scared about, and saying, okay, how would I feel if somebody was forcing that on me?
Yeah.
I'd be pretty upset. And probably the next time I see a spider, if it was forced on me, I'm going to dislike seeing them even more and be more uncomfortable. So it can get worse. But yeah, thank you for that. I think that's all very important points. And I think that helps resonate with people. Our dogs are not being dramatic.
Yeah.
They're not, you know, trying to give you a hard time. They're just trying to work through something they find uncomfortable or unpleasant.
Exactly. And I'm going to admit that I've got this really strange fear that, you know, most people won't understand, and I could be seen as being really dramatic. So I'm really scared of like bread.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's a really strange
Yeah.
thing. So I can't, you know, be like in a bakery that's too open and you know, where I'm too close to bread. It's a
Okay.
thing.
Hey,
It's a
we all got
thing.
our
So
stuff. We all got
we've all got our
something. We
stuff,
all are
but
working on something.
exactly. So I definitely relate to, you know, dogs feeling like, you know, those little things are just too
Right.
scary, you know. And it's like if you put me in like a wall or you know, in a tiny room full of bread, I'm not going to get better. I'm going to stop screaming at some point.
Right,
But
right.
I'm not going to get better, you know.
Exactly. And that's a great, thank you for sharing that, because I think I'm sure a lot of people at some point are like, oh, what do you mean? You know, they don't
Yeah,
understand why that
yeah,
makes you feel a certain way.
yeah,
And I think, you know, especially with dogs that have, I think anxiety also plays a big role, especially with dogs and me having anxiety, you know, there's things that maybe trigger me that
yeah,
another person might not be. Again, back to that, just emotional states, things I might not always understand. It might not
yeah,
even be specific
yeah.
to something that has triggered me in the past. And it's just sometimes our bodies are just responding to certain things. We don't always
Exactly.
have full control over how we're going to feel in the moment. And our dogs are really no different in that regard. So
Exactly.
thank you for that example, because I think sharing that stuff is important, because everyone's got something. Everyone's working on something. And I always say that to my clients too. You know, they're worried about what their dog's going through. And I'm like, we all are working on it.
Yeah,
We all have things that aren't perfect, and that's
yeah,
life, you know, and it helps just
yeah.
normalize that some of this stuff takes time.
Exactly. I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, in terms of things that people can try and some examples. So, you know, knowing what it is now, we kind of went over a little what it is and why it's so important. And it is one of the most important things, in my opinion. You know, what are some examples, or what do you like working with Dave on, or when you first started
Yeah.
working with him? Like, what are a couple of your favorite cooperative care exercises or concepts that you think people could consider trying with their dogs or starting with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, for one, I really like having a sort of platform or a mat that's
Mm-hmm.
comfortable for the dog and, you know, won't slip under their feet because that can, you know, throw them off and make them a little bit worried.
Oh,
And so,
traction. Good.
yeah, exactly. So, what I do is I teach the dog that when they get on this mat or this platform, you know, good things happen, they get treats. And I work on this first without any sort of handling, you know, for a number of times and just make sure that the dog is happy and, you know, able to automatically come onto the mat or the platform
Love
themselves.
that.
And then I might start adding a little bit of handling. So I might just start by touching their back or their chest, you know, somewhere that you know, that they are comfortable with being touched in.
Mm.
And then yeah, give them a treat for that. And then toss a treat away from the mat to see if they're willing to come on again and try this again. So from there, we can progress to like different things, like touching a little bit more sensitive areas of the body. We can simulate, you know, being examined with a stethoscope around the body,
Oh,
or
okay.
simulate injections found the scruff area and things like that. Obviously not using any actual needles, but just
Right.
getting the dog to used to different things, touching them at different pressure levels around those areas. So, you know, we want to teach the animal to kind of expect the unexpected with these sorts of procedures. So you don't have to have the actual veterinary equipment. You can be
Right.
creative and use different things to touch your dog with, you know. For example, I might use a core metal spoon, which can be a little bit like a stethoscope.
Yeah. Or
What
I've
I
seen
like doing.
pens, you know, like the
Yeah,
cap of a pen, kind of like touching them like it's a needle, but obviously it's not. So,
exactly, exactly. So we can do things like that. And with this, the dog has a choice in having more handling done to them by, choosing to get on the platform or the mat. And, if you feel like the dog has suddenly stopped wanting to get on the platform or anything like that, then perhaps that's information that either the dog has had enough, or what you're doing is a little bit too difficult. So that's somewhere where we have to reevaluate what we're doing, maybe scale back down, go at their pace, maybe do shorter sessions.
And I love
another,
the mat.
Yeah, I love a good mat.
I just wanted to let you know, and let those listening, the mat is probably, I know you use it a lot with Dave.
Yeah.
It's probably one of my favorite foundational things for so many other things, but obviously one of them being cooperative care, because it's like going to the starting line.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, we're back home, like home base. Here we are. And then we start the next part of the procedure that we're trying to work through. So I love mat training. I think it helps, to your point, helps dogs kind of relax.
Yeah.
Know that something's about to get started. It's not like we're just bum rushing them when they're laying on the couch, like, hey, we're going to start working on this, so it kind of gives them a nice setup. And I think too, you can bring the mat, and I've done this with Jade. I cut up a yoga mat. I cut a yoga mat in half, and I put it in a backpack, and I bring it with us or when we used to be going into the vet back then. But, and I put it down because the floor is cold, it seems foreign. So it just helps get her stationed. So I love that you said the mat, because that's a big one for us here. And I think that's a wonderful way to get started.
That's a really good point as well, because when I bring the mat to, the what do they call it? The weighing scale in the vet clinic, because before that, before I was as practiced in cooperative care as I am now, when I just get Dave to go on the weighing scale, it's so difficult because it's cold, it's weird, it's stuck in a corner,
slippery a little.
Yeah, exactly. So when the mat's on, he's like, oh, I know this game, I'm just off on there.
I'll hop on there.
Exactly. That's how, effective that can be, even though it's something simple. We don't want to like start the whole vet procedure, with dragging the dog onto the scale, because then that just, makes the whole thing a bit upsetting for the dog. The starting is already crap. So then they're not very happy.
We're already off to a negative beginning here. So I love the mat. So I'm so glad that you touched on that, because anyone listening should start on mat training for multiple things, but especially this. So I'm so glad you brought that up. So is there another thing? So we have like the mat, we start working on maybe handling. I love that you touched on, which I always touch on this too, kind of starting somewhere neutral. So don't go right for the sensitive spot unless you've worked through enough. But if you're new to this, start somewhere your dog feels no feelings about, or feels good about, at least, doesn't feel negative. And I try to do one, when you do start going down, let's say it's the paw, I'll start, shoulder or chest or side or something, and then do one slow, nice motion all the way down to the end. And that's where we go, yes, or whatever your word is, or click, and you reward. So it's like a continuous motion rather than going right for the paw, because that usually can make it more difficult. So
that can be a little bit startling, but and so another behavior, now that we talk about the paw, the thing that I really like as well is essentially the play dead trick, where the dog lies to their side. And I love trick training, and I think it's so much fun and so useful. So this is one of the ways we can use that play dead trick. So for this, right, what I would do is take the dog saying, I'm ready, as them lying flat on their side with their head on the ground as well. So really looking like that play dead trick, rather than, them sort of peeking up, being too alert about you. So what I would use this for is things like nail trimming and checking the dog's paw. So this is one that I like. Obviously you can use it for other things, but for me, I like using it for that, because, the paws would be in a really good position for us to handle. Apart from apart from seeing that the dog's head is on the ground as a sign that they're ready, I also try and make sure that they aren't pulling their feet, their paws away,
moving them back
too often. Exactly, when I'm trying to hold them, because that would also be a sign that they're not really comfortable, and maybe they need a break or need to go back to an earlier step, like I mentioned, of just hovering around their paw. You don't even have to touch it at that point, or like you say, doing a sort of little gradient from somewhere they're comfortable to the paw. And so I think that's one of the ones that I find quite nice.
I use side all the time, like play
Yeah.
dead or side with Jade. She's great with
Yep.
that. And
Yeah.
she's really playing dead. Like she's not
Yeah.
moving. It looks a little startling because I'll do long videos of just messing with her
Yeah.
body, and she's just like laying there like a bump on a log there. And it really does help because I think having these different positionings, whether they're laying down on a mat or even standing on a mat
Yeah.
versus laying down on their side like that,
Yeah.
that opens up. That's actually how I found Jade's first mat. So we found a mast cell tumor last year, and it was
Oh,
this tiniest, it was the size of a pea. It
oh,
was small. No one would have seen that. But I've
yeah.
been doing cooperative care. So we
Yeah.
caught it very early, and I found a little bump, and we got it removed, luckily. But if I wasn't having her on her side like that, I don't know if I would have caught it. I
Exactly.
would think a long time would have went by, and maybe it would have grown in order for me to really see. But I was messing with her and petting her and rubbing her and checking her body out. And this is a way to also just do checkups like that at home. So I love Side, and Side helped us make sure we were getting her the care that she needed. So personal story with Side, I'm just very happy that she's comfortable like that because it allowed me to really check her out everywhere.
Yeah, that's really handy, being able to do that. I think when they're in those positions, or whatever position you're using,
Right.
it opens up different areas that you can kind of look into and touch
Right.
and make sure that they're okay. So I think that's really, really nice that makes sense.
Yeah, it allows you to get into those nooks and crannies that you might have not been
Exactly.
able to get into in another
Yeah.
position. So love
Yeah.
doing Side, and it's a fun trick to show your
Yeah.
family if your dog can lay down like that. I think people think it's fun and kids love it. So it's a win-win there too.
Well, I put it on a cue that just goes bang with my little finger gun, and
Oh, I
then
love
he's there.
that.
So,
I
so
love
I really like
that.
that. It's really cute.
Yeah, I wish I missed the cute part of that, and I just say side, and I'm like, this is not as fun as the bang bang thing, and now I'm
Not
stuck
too
with
late to add it
that. I know, I'm like, maybe we'll start over and we'll do a new
on.
cue and make
Yeah.
this more fun. So maybe this will be my little reminder. Maybe start a new one with her. Yeah, so that's great. So we have the mat, we have side. Is there any other ones that you like to work through with
Yeah.
cooperative care?
So another one, and you see me do a lot of this with my dog Dave, and it's a chin rest. So
Ah,
both on your hand or on another surface, and so that's when the dog rests their chin on something. It could
mm-hmm.
be like a pillow or something like that, but it can also be on your hand. And when they rest their chin, that's a yes, I'm ready kind of sign. And if they lift their head, well, if they lift their head for a little while, they might be checking out what's happening, if you're doing something behind him, and then he gets back into that chin rest quite quickly. I think that's absolutely fine. Or, if they definitely have moved their head off for a while, then they might want you to stop. So some dogs do chin rest quite naturally, especially if they like resting their head on the floor or on the surface. And I would actually just give a treat to the dog for doing that automatically. So he starts to do it more and more. And,
Nice.
we're positively reinforcing that behavior. And over time, we can start adding a cue to that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the other ways to kind of teach this can also be through lowering the dog's head down on your hand with a treat, and then quickly fading out that lure and getting your hand itself to be kind of the cue that the opportunity to rest your head is here and it's available. I just find that to be such a nice and useful behavior, especially for things where we might have to work around the dog's head and we don't want the head moving around so much. So, things like ear
Yes.
cleaning, ear drops, eye checks, the nose, even checking sort of the top layer of their teeth. I find that the chin rest can be quite useful.
Mm-hmm.
But, with all these cooperative care behaviors, or start button behaviors, as they can be called sometimes, I think it's really important to still take note of your dog's body language and kind of make sure
Watch
that
your
they are
dog.
still comfortable with what they're doing. So, on all my programs, all my first time clients, they get a lesson in body language, especially focusing on some of the subtle things that we might miss or might misinterpret. That way they can really understand their dog and see what's going on. I think that's really crucial.
I agree. I think body language is probably if everyone who has a dog understood body language
Yeah.
at even a decent level, we would have a lot less dog bites, a lot less anxious dogs with certain things. I think, again, just understanding where the dog is and how they're feeling is going to allow us the information to adjust in the environment a little bit.
Exactly. I mean, people like to say, I wish my dog could talk to me. And your dog is, they're talking through their body. We just need to learn how to understand that.
We need to learn their language a little bit, and then we can understand what they're trying to say. That's so true. And I love chin rests too. And Freddie had no training at all when we adopted him, and he couldn't even walk on a leash or anything. So I was starting fresh with him. But he was not very fond of really any type of body handling. He's a little Chihuahua. So sometimes small dogs have that, don't touch me, because everyone touches small dogs a lot. I don't know his history, but I was making some guesses based on his behavior, as we all do. But I worked with him on a chin rest, and I clean his ears that way.
Right.
So, because he hated, oh my gosh, he was not interested in the bottle or the pad I was using or the little towel to clean. He didn't want none of that. And I was like, okay, we're going to see what you do. So I just started reinforcing him for the sight of the bottle, the sight of the little rag I was using to clean. And so he was happy with that. And then we worked on chin rest, and I would just pick the bottle up and not actually do anything with it, just pick it up. And, did little baby steps like that till he was really comfortable. And then I would pretend I was putting the solution in his ear, but the cap was on.
Right.
And just to help those listening kind of walk through what the micro steps look like with that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of building. It's simple, but it's a lot of just building up little baby steps. So it's very much like, I kind of use the learning to swim analogy of just, you dip your toe in, you go a couple steps in, see how the water is, then the 3 foot, and then you go into the deep end. But a lot of times people, I think, are accidentally just shoving their dog into the 10-foot end of the pool and going, why don't they like it? So, I think it's gradual buildup. I think gradual would be the key word for a lot of this, and reading your dog's body language and understanding if they're uncomfortable. So I know we could talk about body language a lot, but I wanted do you have what are the couple things you would say people should look for in terms of body language when they're doing cooperative care? What should they be looking out for? I know obviously if they move their head away, that's them saying, off, we're stopping. And then if they're resting or doing the chin rest in that example, they're on, they're ready to go. What are some things you think people can look for? A quick couple tips on body language.
Yeah, so I think some of the things that we might miss or not really be too bothered about are things that might signal a little bit of stress. So things like yawning during a training session, and it's just sort of like really random, but that's what we might call a displacement behavior, where they're not really comfortable. I mean, it is a normal behavior, but they're doing it out of context, so that can be a sign that they're not particularly comfortable with what's going on. They're a little bit stressed, so I would want to take note of that. And another one is sort of coming from my personal experience with Dave is sort of self-grooming as well, where they start, doing something else, where they start licking themselves for like they had plenty of opportunity to do that, but suddenly during your training, they decide to do that. That can sometimes also be another sort of displacement behavior. So that's one that Dave would do. And that's when I know, okay, we need to take a break. And ideally, he shouldn't have to get to that point for me to do that. So sometimes if I accidentally go a little bit long, how we all are, humans, we see it going well and we're like, all right, let's
keep going. Yes.
So I make that mistake myself, and
we all have.
Do that, and I'm like, okay.
You're like, all right, man, I got it. Yeah.
Exactly. So those are really like little things, really subtle things that sometimes we might miss. Other things could be like suddenly sniffing the ground, even though you haven't put any treats on the ground, or they've been there for a while. Why are they sniffing? That can be a little bit of a displacement behavior as well. And
I love those examples, because I don't know who said this, or if at this point, a lot of this stuff's recycled, and I don't know if I thought of it or I heard it somewhere, read it somewhere, who knows? But I always say it's kind of like your dog's version of checking their phone.
Yes.
So it's
That's
like, I don't know what to
do.
do. Well, let's just pretend I'm scrolling,
Yeah.
We've all done that nervous, just like
that.
open up Instagram 15 times in a row or checking my email, even though nothing's there. And I have dogs that do that a lot. So that those displacement, that's kind of what that is. Or if I had a dog one time who we were working on some skills, and he had a pretty short tolerance for how long we were going to work on training stuff. So it was a little bit out of the norm of what I'm used to seeing. So we would do a few rounds, and it was really short. Like we'd do like 2 or 3 rounds of it.
Yeah.
And he would get up and go over to his water bowl and take a couple drinks and then come back in, and he was ready again. And then, even if we were talking for a moment, he would just not know what to do. And then he would go back over to the water bowl and do a little. And I was like, it's almost like when you're on a date and you're a little nervous and you don't know what to do with your hands. And so you're just like sipping on your water and talking, and he had been checked at the vet, and there wasn't any like medical things, because I always worry about that, but it was really just in that context a displacement type of behavior of like checking his phone, so to speak, of just, I don't know what to do, I need a moment, and he would go over and do that. I thought it was really kind of cute incredible. In the moment. Because they were like, oh, he's just really thirsty today, and I was like, I don't think that's if he's been checked and we had that whole vet thing, I was like, I actually think it's that he needs a moment from this, and they were like, oh, and they started to notice he was doing that a lot. So they were trying to get it before he felt like going to check his phone. So I think, like you said, trying to catch it ahead of time, even though we get excited and we want to keep it going, but it is important to take some breaks and allow your dog, kind of end it before your dog says, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. I think that's key.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, with like what you said earlier on, with ear drops and things like that, sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable if, the dog has some sort of infection or in some little bit of pain. So we have to understand that we got to keep it really, really short, because they might not be comfortable. They might be sort of participating in it, but we don't want to push them to a point. And, if they can only do 1 rep, that day, that's fine.
That's
if
good.
they're going through something, even just 1 or 2, that's fine. Then we work from there,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, keeping it short is I always rather go shorter than longer.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you feel like you're doing a lot, then you're probably doing a lot. So just kind of keeping it short bursts of positive exposure is what I try to remind people is the key, until you get a nice rhythm going. When do you think, Rachel, if somebody's dealing with this, or let's say their dog really is having trouble, or people just, maybe they're trying some of this at home and it might not be going as well as they had hoped, or maybe their dog does have some anxiety issues with some of this, when do you think it's time to work with a qualified, force-free trainer on cooperative care? And maybe what are some ways they can work either with a trainer or on their own with finding pairing up with a vet or a groomer, because this is a team of dog professionals that are going to be involved with the dog or touching the dog or working with the dog. So what would your advice be for people who might be wanting to seek help, or maybe they haven't considered it yet and they should be?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really important to do that. So, if you've got a dog who definitely seems really worried, or, they have some medical conditions that do need some working on, and they need to see the vet quite frequently. Dogs like that, I think it'll be really good to get them a professional force-free trainer that can help you with that whole process, because it can be quite challenging sometimes, knowing when to go ahead, when to take the next step further with that dog in terms of the handling. So I think it'll be good to get started as soon as they can. And like we said earlier, if you have a puppy and they're completely fine, you can still do it. That's a really good chance to start getting them doing it. Well, in terms of working with vets or the groomers, one of the ways that you can start, and this is, you don't have to really have a trainer for this, but start by asking your vet or your groomer whether you could kind of drop by during their lunch or after hours, things like that, just so that your dog can go over and have a little exploration session, let the dog sniff the area, have a little play session, or even a little training session at the
happy visit.
Exactly, one of those things. And without anything being done to them. And I know that this can be a little bit difficult during COVID times, but if you
Yeah.
check around, if there are any vets or groomers that are open to this, and look up to
Hmm.
see whether there's a fear-free certified veterinarian or groomer in
Very
your area.
important. Yeah, I'll put
Exactly.
that in the show notes, actually, the fear-free
Definitely.
directories. I know we're fear-free certified trainers.
Yep.
So we've gone through this whole process, but there are individual vets and vet clinics that are fear-free. So I'll put that in the notes. Thank
Yeah,
you, Rachel, for
exactly.
bringing that up.
That would be really helpful. So,
Mhm.
I think things like that can help. And, even if you're not able to go into the clinic right now, just that whole journey of taking your dog to the clinic,
Mhm.
you can make that nice as well, so that the dog doesn't realize that, oh God, every time I go to this route, it's going to be something
Yes.
bad happening. So you can go there and play outside for a bit, maybe just walk past it, just things like that,
Yeah.
just to ease it a little bit. And what I find, with this sort of training is also having other people. So even if that's just another family member, to kind of help pretend to be the vet or the groomer
Yeah.
in the training. Yeah. Because one of the concerns people have, is that they're not allowed to go into the vet clinic with their dog because of COVID. And I think
Right.
that's one of the ways to kind of work with that, and getting your dog used to working with different people and working with more than one person at a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find that to be really helpful and really important.
I think that's really a good point, because I've definitely had John come up and act like he was going to be doing some type of procedure or a blood draw or some type of vet
Yeah,
moment. And I'm like,
yeah,
all right, walk over here and pretend you're doing something, and
yeah,
it is, and I think some people think, oh, well, they know that that's my nephew or my husband or my wife or my partner or whoever. And yes, your dog is probably very aware that it's somebody they know. But again, it's more about getting those reps in, getting
yeah,
that context of, okay, somebody walks up behind me or somebody lifts my
exactly.
paw up like this while I'm resting my chin over here. So it's just about kind of getting it's like a mock up of what it's going
Yeah,
to look like. It doesn't have to be exact, but we want to practice that fire drill before there's the fire kind of thing that I try to say, is just kind of practicing it. We don't want to practice it when the fire is happening. So,
exactly. And doing
yeah.
something is better than not doing anything at all.
Definitely. Every little bit helps. And like you said, I've used to, when Jade was younger, I brought her to the vet a couple of times. And even if it was busy inside and I wasn't interested in really going in the lobbies, there was a lot
Yeah,
of people and dogs, I would just walk around, the parking lot
yeah,
area or the little area to use like where the dogs can go to the bathroom before they go in, just getting her used to the sights and the smells of that area and making it positive, and then hopping right back in the car and going
yeah,
home.
yeah.
So Lord knows we need stuff to do these days. So make it an outing
Exactly.
with your dog and make a date with your dog to go do this and make it fun.
Yeah,
So
to the car park.
yeah. So I think that's great. I'll definitely put the fear free directory. And I do know people that try to look up the fear free directory and that maybe there isn't a vet or a groomer close by that they can utilize.
Yeah,
Try to partner up with your vet and just raise these questions to them and say, hey,
yeah,
even with my vet, I'm like, they know me obviously by now, but I'm like, when I could go in, hey, I'm going to have food with me, I'm going to put the yoga mat down,
yeah,
what position. And I would ask, like, rather than them moving her and like flipping her over, trying to maneuver her body, I'm like, let me know what you need her to do and I will ask her to move. We don't need to, not that they're trying to handle her incorrectly, but that's trying to get through what they have to do. And
yeah,
I'm there to
yeah,
advocate for my dog. So
yeah.
we need to advocate for our dogs. And if we know it's going to make them uncomfortable or there's a better way to do it, step in, ask questions, let them know, bring some food with you or a toy your dog likes and use that to help them out as well. So
Yeah, another possibility, now that you've mentioned it, with COVID restrictions on, is that you can try to see if your vet or groomer would be open to having a sort of live stream for you, so that you can try and guide them on how to do the cooperative care, stuff that you've been working on with your dog. I think the important thing is to understand that doing all of this will actually make their jobs a bit easier, because they'll be
right.
working with a dog who's comfortable with them, instead of one that might be struggling to get away or trying to bite them and things like that. So kind of explaining that, saying that, you know, I've worked on this with my dog, and you might be a little bit more comfortable if you try this, and can I walk you through what you can do with him to make the whole process a bit easier for you as well. So
absolutely, I think that's great. And I thought about that when I brought Jade the other day. I'm like, I wish we could do a live stream. I didn't think of it till she was already inside away from me, and I was crying in my car a little bit, but you know, as a concerned mom in the car. But I think that's great. And I think, you know, I even told, so as one last example about this, just advocating for our dogs. I know this might not be in terms of the cooperative care, but when they had to aspirate, which is like, they had to take some samples from her skin, little bumps and things. We're making sure there's not more bumps. And so, you know, I let them know, which I don't think many people would think of, because even I didn't think of bringing this up for a while until a few years ago. And just being a trainer and working with it, I realized, I should be saying this more frequently. But I tell any new person that's going to be taking her into the room or whatever, not to, I'm like, hey, she's very friendly. She's never done anything, you know, growling. She's never done anything to the vet or anything like that. I know she's probably a little nervous, but she'll just stand there. But I know she's a little bit uncomfortable. And I'll let them know, hey, I know that most of the time you're trying to console the dogs and like pet them a lot and kind of get in their feet. Oh, she's a good girl and all that. I know she's going to feel worse if that happens. She doesn't like strangers, as I don't, kind of getting close to her face and going, oh, you're a good girl. And like all that happy talk. She just needs calm, cool, collected, and just get it done. That's better for her. So I let them know, hey, when people go and handle her, just kind of be polite, obviously, but you don't need to give her the bells and whistles and the oohs and the ahs that much, because, or the petting, the excessive petting. And I think they appreciate that, because I say, hey, this is to help you guys out. Like, she'll feel better. So like you're saying, Rachel, this is a cooperative care stuff, and advocating for your dog is going to help the entire community with the dog, like whether that's the vet, the groomer, the dog walker, the pet parent, anyone who's handling the dog is going to wind up being better off when we do these things and say these things and speak up and work with our dogs on it. So I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, it's a collective sort of teamwork thing, that it's not
it's a
just
village.
the dog that we're helping, you know, it's everyone that we're doing this for.
It's got a nice effect on everybody, which one of the things I love about cooperative care, it's just, it's taking up more than just training a behavior with the dog. So I think it's so much more than that. I'm glad we can highlight it. And I think that, I hope this discussion anyway, I'm sure it does, but can inspire someone listening to start working on cooperative care training and get started on some of this. And with that, because I know you have a lot on this, where can those listening connect with you, Rachel, and see some of this great work you're doing with your dog, Dave, on cooperative care and other stuff? But where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so, well, my website is dogatheart.co.uk, and my Instagram page, where I'm most active and where I'll post some videos on my stories or even as posts. And sometimes I've got little guide videos as well, so that you can follow along and try it yourself. That's dog_at_heart. So that's dog_at_heart for Instagram.
Awesome. Yes. And I'm a big fan. So keep doing what you're doing. Love the work that you're doing with Dave and everything you do. So, and I very much appreciate you coming on, Rachel, to talk about this. And like I said, I hope this inspires others to put this at the important place I think it should be at. And thank you for advocating for this and coming on to talk about it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
It means so much. And so thank you for coming on, Rachel. Thank you for those listening. And as always, treat yourself and treat your dog.